Have you ever asked yourself why you can't speak Spanish? Let's talk about a few reasons why. One reason why you can't speak Spanish is because you are just studying Spanish too much. I think that there is this very big misconception that many Spanish learners have that if they just study Spanish for countless hours, that one day when they wake up, they are going to just start speaking Spanish automatically. So they'll get their Spanish verb book and start just memorizing all the different verb conjugations as much as possible. They'll get their Spanish grammar book out and start to memorize and reviewing as many grammar concepts as possible as well. The same thing goes with reading a book in Spanish. I'm just going to keep reading this book over and over again, and then eventually I'll be able to speak Spanish. Or with watching telenovelas or listening to a podcast in Spanish. Now, there is some merit to this idea because, of course, you need to learn the Spanish language to be able to speak. You have to learn new vocabulary words. You have to be able to learn a little bit about Spanish grammar, but it's up to a certain point. Speaking Spanish is a skill that needs to be developed, just like many other skills in life, and they usually take a lot of time and dedication and effort. And trust me, I know this may be very difficult to wrap your head around, and it was the same thing for me during college. Because during college, guess what? We did not speak very much at all. I mean, I wasn't speaking outside of class, and then in class and for my homework assignments, we spoke very little. So to my surprise, even though I studied so much, I was confused to why I couldn't speak Spanish very well without a script in front of me. Another reason why you can't speak Spanish is because of lack of consistency. So maybe right now you are saying to yourself, well, Joshua, I do practice speaking Spanish. Now that's great, but maybe you're only speaking Spanish once a week or once a month or once every couple of months. If you really want to develop the skill to speak Spanish, you should definitely be a lot more consistent than that. I made this big mistake of not being consistent a few years ago, and I remember when I wanted to tell stories in Spanish and talk in the past or talk about the past in Spanish, but it was extremely difficult for me and I was very stressed. But I wasn't consistent at all, and I wasn't developing the habit of speaking consistently. So some days I would attempt to record myself speaking Spanish, telling a story, right? But then I'll get really frustrated and then I would just stop and I wouldn't do it for a few days or even a week. In my mind at the time, I thought what I was doing was sufficient enough for me to be able to tell 20, 30-minute stories in Spanish super easily, but that was not the case at all. I had to push myself to practice speaking Spanish more frequently and also to speak for longer periods of time. And that's when I started to see a lot more progress. Another reason why you can't speak Spanish is because you lack knowledge of Spanish grammar. By this, I don't mean that you need to spend countless more hours studying all the grammar concepts in this Spanish grammar book here, but it's more of application of what you are learning. I struggled with this a lot as well because I did study a lot of Spanish grammar. So I thought that I was going to be able to speak very freely and very smoothly. But when I tried to speak Spanish to myself or speak to a native Spanish speaker, it was very confusing for me. I was always pausing. I was second guessing myself. All the grammar that was in my head was just so confusing. I had a lot of jargon that I memorized, but I didn't really have a good grasp on how actually to connect different words and phrases together and how to transition in between different sentences. Lacking vocabulary is another reason why you can't speak Spanish. So maybe you just started a few weeks ago or last week or a month ago. Right now, you just don't have enough vocabulary to actually start to create sentences together. You don't know how to pronounce Spanish words. A big aspect of speaking Spanish and developing the skill is being able to pronounce Spanish words. So if you only know how to spell them, but you have no idea how to actually say them, this can be very challenging to get anything out of your mouth because you have no idea how it should sound. This does not mean that you have to have perfect pronunciation by any means. But just by learning a few of the basic pronunciation rules will help you out so much. One example of this would be if I were to open up a book right now in German. I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of those words because I have no idea how any of those letters should sound for those words. So in that case, I would just be inventing my own language because I would be guessing how to pronounce all of those German words. The fear of speaking Spanish is another big reason why you can't speak Spanish. Right now, imagine yourself when you have had that fear of speaking Spanish. What happened? Maybe your whole body froze and you felt like you couldn't move at all and your mind went completely blank. No Spanish words, no Spanish phrases were coming to your head. And your mouth, well, it seemed completely useless because it was sealed shut. And when you attempt to have a conversation in Spanish, you may have this fear because of a few different reasons. You have a fear of making mistakes. You have a fear of looking stupid to that native Spanish speaker because you are making these mistakes. You have a fear that the Spanish speaker won't understand you when you speak Spanish. You have a fear of not being able to fit in with the Spanish speakers that you are talking to. You can't speak Spanish because you are a perfectionist. This is for all of those Spanish learners out there that are way too hard on themselves. So you actually can speak Spanish. You can speak Spanish to yourself. You can speak Spanish to other native Spanish speakers without any problems. You don't have to use your native language, but you are just way too critical of yourself and you are a perfectionist. So if you make one mistake, let's say a pronunciation mistake like I have done many times, you say sabiduría instead of sabiduría, then you say to yourself, oh, I can't speak Spanish. Or maybe you are having a conversation in Spanish, but you forgot many different words and phrases that you have learned, let's say, over the past few months. So that's when you get really frustrated. And again, you say to yourself, I can't speak Spanish because I forgot those words and phrases. Or maybe just overall, one day you feel like your fluency has decreased a lot and you don't feel like you can really speak Spanish well that day. So again, you say the same thing, I can't speak Spanish. I don't feel like I can speak Spanish today, even though you are fully capable of speaking Spanish. You have equated speaking Spanish perfectly, smoothly, without any mistakes as speaking Spanish, and that is not the case. And yes, I am very guilty of doing this many times throughout my Spanish learning journey. I hope I was able to shed some light on some reasons why you can't speak Spanish. Now, if you like videos just like this one and you would like to support my channel, consider becoming a member of the channel. Details are linked down below in the description box. If you want to learn how I develop my Spanish speaking skills, watch this next video.